We're literally going to take hot and popular watches and give you today's price versus a price exactly a year ago. First and foremost, I want to introduce a very special guest in the studio today, and that is our very own CEO of 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 to meet with the 𝗙𝗫𝗄𝗧 Art Memorial, to whom we donated funds in order to improve their art systems for children, something that both me and Nino were very passionate about. There will be footage on that. You guys will get to check that out. But I guess you're wondering, why is Nino here on our video? Nino is an avid watch collector. He wouldn't call himself a watch expert, but he's an avid watch collector. And I think the biggest reason Nino is here is because we're actually going to get a true, real retail client perspective on things, which is something we don't often get here, because Nino obviously loves watches and Nino buys watches, and we're actually going to get an unbiased consumer opinion from him, besides the oohs and the ahs over all the watches, which he's been doing for the last 5 minutes before the camera started rolling. But we're going to get that true opinion. But it's going to be a quick video for you guys, because literally all we're doing is comparing prices, and maybe we'll stick in a few whys. You think this happened, Adrian?
I love whys.
He loves the whys. And with Adrian being the head buyer here at Luxury Bazaar, you know, I've always said it, he's always got his finger on the pulse of the watch market to the minute, if you will. And things have been a bit volatile as of the last couple of months.
It's been a roller coaster for sure, and
we're kind of stabilized at
the
this
front
point.
seat.
Yeah, well, you definitely had the front seat of the roller coaster, but it's kind of stabilized at this point, which is why we're actually able to do this video, because I think more or less the prices we'll give out will stay plus minus 5–10% at this point, which is, to me, is a stable market.
Yeah.
I'm going to jump right in, and I just happen to have one of the most popular watches of all time, the Daytona, except this is the two-tone. The one thing about the two-tone Daytonas is they were never really popular, right? They were actually not popular at all, and I think with the last craze that had happened over the last couple of years, you know, those that were within reach started climbing along those that were out of reach, i.e. stainless steel Daytonas, which got up to $55,000 for a white dial.
Yeah, I mean, the 116523, the previous gen version of this 116503, as well as the Zenith Daytona two-tones back in the day, they were just not really a thing, right? Up until basically 2020, post-COVID. So we saw some very, very high price marks on a lot of two-tone Daytonas. And the white dial actually surprised me. It reached a price of $35,000 at its peak.
And where's it at today?
And today you can pick up one in this condition, for example, 2021, 2022 example for right under $23,000.
So we're looking at about a 30% decrease. Now I'm going to ask the consumer in the building. I hate to leave you as a consumer. Nino's actually a very dear friend, so calling him a consumer is kind of weird. But so from a consumer's perspective, obviously with the hype of all the watches going through the roof and stuff like that, did you find yourself attracted to, or at least starting to consider things like two-tone Daytonas, two-tone Rolexes in general, because of unavailability of the more popular models and the fact that they're also climbing in price?
Yeah, you know, I think there's a lot of value to be had in some of these kind of pieces, especially ones which are kind of like in the unobtainium kind of like realm.
Unobtainium.
Ian, make sure you take note of that. Unobtainium.
Oh, we're gonna have that as an email blast. Unobtainium. I like that.
See what happens?
Yeah. So, great perspective.
So it's kind of like in pre-pandemic and even during the pandemic, we were looking at prices which were unobtainium, right? And you had people such as myself who were like really looking at trying to diversify your collection. It was just really hard to get into some of these different pieces. I think given the market correction, if you will, that's like taken place, it gives opportunity for people who are collectors of all different varieties to make use of that chance.
Do you think an average collector, now that these have lowered in price, have kind of gone back down to that, okay, it's much lower in price? What's the stainless steel version of this today?
So stainless steel with the white dial, obviously ceramic, the panda, so we should call it. At the peak right now, it's probably $34,000.
Exactly.
At the peak.
So now, do you think, as an average consumer, do you think there will be some sort of a turn off factor off the two tones and they kind of go back into that dark hole, or do you think that's here to stay?
No, I've always thought that it has a lot of personality and character to some of these watches. If you, as you've always said, right, if you buy it, you should buy what you like. And it's like, if you like these kinds of different pieces, especially two tones, even something like one of these over here, like the root beers, great value, amazing watch, looks gorgeous on the wrist. I think you just can't go wrong with some of these.
So funny you should.
I really think that, kind of segueing into what he said, the two-tone root beer, I believe, is was pretty much the focal point to the rise of two-tone sports watches back for Rolex again. So
I personally think that the two-tone root beer is actually solely responsible for the rise of the two-tone watches. And again, this is all wrapped up.
I love that watch.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so did everybody else. What he said is exactly that.
Yep.
Everybody loved that watch. They loved its look, and I apologize for not unwrapping it because it's just impossible.
Natalie will cut your hand off.
Yeah, Natalie will cut my hand off. But the root beer is the one I think that was the last and final like nail in the coffin punch that propelled all two-tones through the roof because of the popularity of this particular watch. At the height of the market, what we were looking at this.
Two-tone rupees were also $35,000.
And today?
And today they can be picked up under 20.
So, and the retail on it is what now?
The retail on it, okay, so I always try to factor in the tax because you are paying the tax. So I think the retail price on a two-tone root beer is right around the low 14. So you're almost 16,000 into it, right? So pending condition, pre-owned to new, at the peak, you're gonna be 22,000, probably at the lowest for an example with box and papers around the 20 mark.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So a year ago, 35,000. Today.
So essentially, it's attainable. You're almost basically paying retail because I do know the allocation on these two-tone root beers still is pretty low. The demand is pretty high, so I think it's a great opportunity right now. I don't think that there's more of a floor to hit with these, right? I don't foresee them going.
See,
under
my
retail.
problem is I go back many more years where I remember pretty much any gold or two-tone Rolex, and a lot of the steel stuff was just discounted, right? Mm-hmm. But we now seeing sort of a floor where some of the stuff is still 1.5x, 2x, and things of that nature, and you're just not physically feasible for this to go below list, if you will.
I don't think it'll happen.
Well, from a consumer perspective, going back to the times where you could walk into your local AD, get a little discount on certain things, a better deal on one or the other, and so on and so forth. As a consumer, would you want to go back to those days, or do you like the fact that even after the dip that we've had, watches are still trading over list? Now, mind you, this is a guy that has relations with ADs, and he's able to get stuff at retail, and so on and so forth. So this is a loaded question for you.
I mean, naturally, I'd just say, honestly, I'm glad the fact that all the years of saving that my wife and I have done, if we're putting it directly into pieces that we're clearly like buying to enjoy, that it's going to hold its value, right? And so we still, of course, like have a level of appreciation for the watches that we wear, having a lot of like fun doing that. But I think it's like also knowing the fact that all of your money isn't gone down the toilet is something which is kind of beneficial. So
notice he said retain value, right?
Yeah.
And that's the key factor that
That's what it used to be. That used to be the idea behind, especially Rolex, up until the other brands kind of caught up to it. The idea with the Rolex was if you buy a watch, if you buy this luxury product, you're always able to essentially get your money back, right? That's why it was a house.
That was
a mentality, and if you go back many years, that stands true. But today, and we've covered this topic a lot of times about how watches have become commodities and tradable commodities. How could you not admire the fact that if you're able to get watches at retail, them climb up in value? Because that's part of people's assets and portfolio nowadays. It's part of their net worth.
Again, my whole thing is, and look, I've said it to you numerous times, you know, you're literally the smartest person that I know. You understand a lot about a lot.
That's saying a lot coming from him. Wow, everybody hear that?
Nino is literally the smartest person I know, I promise you. And my theory on things was this, right? Market goes crazy. A commodity, in this case watches, goes through the roof. Something that I always preach is not an investment. You buy what you like. It's not an investment. It's not an investment. It's not an investment. But then you get the likes of Bloomberg, the JP Morgans, the likes of Wall Street Journal start writing these articles showing actual indexes of these watches and their performance and things of that nature. Actually, Marco and Adrian just did a whole analysis. There'll be a whole video where we literally took pricing from our own data, that we didn't take anything from anyone.
There was no website scraping.
We literally went into accounting to 2016.
Past 6 years, I think.
Past 6 years, we pulled up by model, specific models, and we showed what we bought them and sold them for, and he made a graph and the whole to-do. Mark is also extremely smart, comes from the finance world. With that said, all these articles come about, and all of a sudden people are recognizing that, this is really a tradable commodity. It's an actual index. You know, there's ups, there's downs, and I think with the fact that they've come down a little bit also showed the fact that this is a true index, not just something that just goes over value over time.
Well, I think something that happened during the pandemic is the fact that people who weren't even into watches were getting into this
Yeah.
game of collecting, or more so just like buying.
Absolutely.
But they were buying it just to hoard it, not to wear it. And it was becoming more of just like, hey, what can I get? Oh, I have this. Instead of throwing it into mutual funds, stocks, like whatever kind of like investment that you want, crypto might be it not. People were thinking, hey, let's try to put it into watches. Let's try to buy everything that we can.
Way more fun, right? It's,
But
so it's a lot more enjoyable.
So this is where I would have to agree with. This is where I would have to agree with the Wall Street Journals and the Bloombergs and the JP Morgans, because look, even after the dip happened, if you consider those guys that have their AD relations, which normally would buy one watch a year, maybe 2 watches a year, they're all of a sudden loaded up on 20, 30 pieces. On paper, they made a lot of gains. And if they were to come out in the market and sell today, they would still be in the plus column, and the market is somewhat stable already. So that, I guess you can say, is a true index, true investment. I only have one problem with that. I am able to source watches, to buy watches, and to also sell watches. And even for me, it's the most liquid for me, but not as liquid as trading a crypto or trading a stock. And that's so when people ask me that question, I say, yes, I'll agree with the index. I'll agree with the fact that it's become a real tradable market, if you will. The issue to me is always the liquidity, because as a consumer, if you wanted to sell one of your watches and take profit off the table, you still have to either enlist the help of some third-party platforms, which you're not going to have a lot of luck on because you'd be a newbie seller and probably end up getting frauded or something. Or you enlist the help of a guy like me, where you're still leaving a little bit of money on the table, and also that's the only liquidity there. So the return on investment diminishes the minute you bring in a third party. Yeah. So are these things today true investments, or are they not?
I think that it comes down to kind of like what's your goal of like your collection, and how your collecting habits, and like how you're actually looking at it, right? Some people.
Well, you're a hoarder. We know that.
I never really saw him.
He's never sold a single watch. I promise you.
I think it's about what your perspective is when you're looking at the game of watches. When I say that, I say it from the perspective of, if you're a person who likes to buy to collect, you like to wear them, you like to look at them, the way that people even have coin collections from back in the day, right? Or stamp collections. People just buy them, they look at them, they look at them with loops, you spend a lot of quality time with them, that kind of thing. Some people buy it to flex. Some people buy it directly because they want to wear it out to parties, to events, to wherever that it might be. And then it's like the people who are buying it because they love the horology. They love to understand the movements, like everything that went behind the engineering behind it, right? How did this watchmaker come up with these different designs? How much R&D went into like the concept behind this? What kind of complications do you have? Is it a minute repeater? Is it like a flying tourbillon? Is it like whatever that you might have like had under the hood? There's so many different lenses of like how you're looking at this. And so for me personally, being the engineer that I am, I always look at it from the sense of like, how much time was put into actually creating the piece itself?
Yeah, absolutely.
What happened, like, does it look different under the dial or different lighting, right? All the different parts and facets of a watch under the hood, that's what I geek out about. That's what I find the most.
So he literally just said what we've kind of been preaching backwards, post the buy or during the buy, where before the buy, we kind of preach the same things. Every single point that you just hit is exactly what I tell a consumer to look at across all those points, and none of them are wrong. The flex is not wrong. The engineering part of it is not wrong. And I always tell them, I'm like, look, once you learn enough about them, we had a client in here earlier, professional football player, and he came in and he was infatuated by an MB&F. Mm-hmm. And I told him, I said, I won't sell you that watch today. What I would love for you to do is go read about Max, read about MB&F, read about independent watchmaking altogether, because I want you to really understand as to why you would be potentially interested in this watch outside of the fact that it looks pretty crazy, like the MB&F Perpetual I showed him, right? And he appreciated that. And that's what Nino just said is, if you think about it, I've been preaching that for years, right? Is get to know the product, get into the product. Don't get into it for the sole purpose of, okay, it's dubbed an investment now. That it can be a purpose, but that should not, that's the only purpose that shouldn't be singular.
Yeah, and I think it's even like, even for myself, right? I've been a collector for, I don't know, maybe around 20 years or so. I'm not ready yet, for instance, to get into an FP Journe because I feel like I'm not there yet. I need to grow into that brand a little bit more.
And that's how you end up with multiple watch boxes, and that's how you end up hoarding watches.
But I need to, like, me as like as a collector, I know that I personally am not ready for that yet. I want to grow into it. I want to understand more of like the horology behind like the brand itself. I want to slowly like get into it. Mind you, prices are like up through the roof. Waiting lines are like however long. But even if one was offered like on the table today, I would probably still like set it aside.
If a basic one was offered to you, you'd probably go for it.
Probably.
A basic entry model.
But what I'm saying is just like in general, like even like an 𝗿𝗏𝗬𝗬𝗢𝗏, right, or one of these. These are fantastic. Like I think. Entry level like watches from FP Journe, which are fantastic buys. I think great pieces, awesome value for bang for your buck, and just like what they've done. It's
you gotta
so
love the
simple,
tech behind
it's
it.
elegant.
I mean.
Absolutely.
So speaking of entry level at FP Journe, since you brought it up, let's throw some numbers out there. So FP Journe Havana, which is
The Platinum Havana.
probably the lowest on a totem pole as far as I'm concerned, as far as like entry models that for Journe.
No, I would say the Octaline Sport models, I would say, are slightly below than 𝗿𝗏𝗬𝗬𝗢 as well, because it's a quartz movement. But yeah, Havana Platinum, I mean, this is a watch that could be had for today at 85,000, whereas at the peak was 135, right? So
Oddly enough, some of the higher stuff from Journe, I don't see them suffering as much. Well, it's because we all know there's one controlling entity out there that
Yep.
holds a lot of that stuff. In fact, more than anybody else.
Yep.
And they're not allowing for those prices to fall, and they can afford to sit on them, which I admire that. What about the 𝗿𝗏𝗬𝗬𝗢𝗏𝗍𝗍?
So the 𝗿𝗏𝗬𝗍𝗍, I mean, look, it's a watch that I believe retails somewhere in the $20,000. $23,000. Well, we personally sold this particular one for as high as $55,000. I think that was the peak of what we ended up selling it for. Today, it hasn't taken such a sharp turn for the worse, as I like to call it. It's still kind of hovering around the 40-something thousand mark.
But still, it is a significant mark. So in a year's time, we're talking about, and mind you, this is a watch that I could have had under retail before. Like when these were first introduced, you could buy these things under retail. At least that's what we would offer if we were buying them. Gets all the way up to 55, but only dips back down to about 2x, a little less, which is still pretty decent. I'm gonna mix it up a little bit, and let me pull this straight over. First of all, let me put this guy here. I'm gonna get into some APs. We can sort of do this a rapid fire. I'll go into the older ones first. So the craze of the perpetual calendars, the skeletons, the non-skeletons. Do we have a skeleton here? No, we didn't bring one. So I'm gonna start with two regular APs, and these are your, I don't want to call them run-of-the-mill because that's kind of bad to say about a perpetual.
I also want to point out that at the peak of the market, there was a big run up on 39 millimeter perpetuals specifically, because they were sleepers, as we like to call it back in the day. But I think people really appreciate the fact that a Royal Oak in a 39 millimeter case size is basically the gold standard. This is what Gerald Genta made. He made this watch tailor fit 39 millimeters for the wrist, and in a perpetual form, from an aesthetic standpoint, it's one of the best watches ever made.
So for me, it's the following. I'm going to go with, let's say pricing before the last dip, yellow gold, 175.
Yep.
The skeletons were 350, 400, some of them, depending on the variations. The stainless steel was actually not too far behind. They were at about 130, 145, maybe even up to 150, depending how complete they are.
Depends the dial, depends how complete. But this white example, for example, around the 135 range, I believe is where we sold it before.
And now we're looking at a pretty significant dip on these.
Yeah.
These are what now?
These are hovering around the 100,000 mark, and the stainless steel one around 85.
Yeah,
So
I mean they're always close, but they did, again, they went up quickly, and I think one of the reasons is to go back to what me and you were talking about, the two-tone stuff, how everything brought it back, kind of the two-tone stuff was kind of like brought up, and then it was knocked right back down, and the significance of these were brought up because of the hype surrounding the auction results of all the skeletons, and it brought all the other perpetuals up, especially considering these are no longer produced. Yep. Same movement, it's I guess it's kind of like the same fate. And I'll show another, I guess, older AP, and that's, again, I'm gonna go back to a watch that I sold going all the way back to the beginning of my career, right? The rose gold 39 millimeter chrono from AP. These, again, hype of the Royal Oaks. These were brought up to what?
So this one, really isn't a big gap in terms of price increase or decrease on these 39, especially on a strap. Now, there has been in recent times big popularity with the whole bracelet kick, right? Whereas before you were able to kind of order bracelets on the fly at discount.
Hold on, bracelets actually became their own
Bracelets became a
tradable commodity.
in
Like
itself,
people
you
were
know?
selling bracelets
unreal.
significantly over list because people would want to convert these.
Right.
Yeah.
So people were converting them. We were converting them. Guilty. But listen, our clients love them. Yeah.
Like legally, meaning
Legally,
an
yeah.
authentic
Yeah.
AP bracelet.
I mean,
you pay
right.
like
So
arm and a leg for it.
on a strap, this at the peak was 50 to 55,000. Today it's hovering around the $40,000 mark.
Still 30% decrease.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still significant. But then the minute, it was funny, you would take this watch and you would add a bracelet for which you would pay through the roof, but your margin would actually go up once you would put it on. But it made more sense to invest money into a bracelet for this to go up. Let's go something simple. 15,400, right? OR.
That's the 15,500.
15,500.
Yeah, we do have a 15,400 on the strap.
The one
as
on
well.
the left.
Where is it?
15,400 is the blue dial right there.
Got it.
Yeah.
I should bring my glasses next time. So 15,400, 15,500s, the base Royal Oaks, the holy grails, especially the blue dials, the amount of craze that was surrounding these watches was just absolutely insane. I believe these are the ones, including the 15,202, might as well bring this guy out here, right? These are the ones that you saw, oops, can you see that? No, you can't. You know?
Slide it back a little bit.
No, you can. There we go. So you can, this is the one that went the most berserk. What did this get up to?
This is an interesting one because in a matter of a year, it tripled in price.
I
Literally
think it's like
tripled.
almost quadrupled in price.
Tripled in price. At the
COVID
beginning,
hit, we sold one for 32,500.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's
125 peak?
150.
150 peak. So
We
it's-
sold two
it
for
went
150.
up 5x.
We're talking about brand new example, sticker example.
Then again, we're also taking a
year.
year's time. So a year ago, where was this?
Under 70,000 a year ago.
Okay, and then went up to what?
Went up to 150.
And now what?
Now they're, again, pending condition, they're hovering around, at the max probably today, $85,000.
So this thing doubled,
Yeah.
then came back down pretty much to the same price.
Yeah.
What about?
The issue with the 15202 was an interesting one, and I'm going to single that one out specifically because the 16202 came out with the quick set date, which kind of just put all the 15202s to the side because people wanted the updated movement, they wanted the quick set date, they wanted the royal, the 50th anniversary. So that's what kind of pushed that down a little bit.
And AP finally got rid of the Jaeger movement.
Yeah, exactly. Very outdated movement.
It's actually a pretty good machine. But all right, let's talk about these two. Where were these at at the peak or a year ago, and where are they now?
15400 ST at the peak, 75,000 today. It can be had for 45,000. The 15500 OR, specifically on a strap, was upwards of 75,000. Today it could be had for 55,000. So on a bracelet, the 5500.
So is it fair to say that the biggest hit is the steel stuff?
Yeah, fair to say from a percentage perspective, yes.
So steel pretty much took the biggest hit. But again, you said this is how much today?
The 15400?
Yeah.
$45,000.
$45,000. So it's damn near still 2x. I think original list on it was 28,000 or something.
Oh, you mean from MSRP?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that the 154s discontinued. Yeah, that's fair to say.
I mean,
about
we're
2x.
talking about a dip in the market. We're talking about some people say, oh my God, the watch market is tanking. Well, it's not tanking when stuff is still trading at double MSRP. And mind you, my days, MSRP was today MSRP is irrelevant because everything is over list. In my days, MSRP was irrelevant to anyone because they wanted to know how much off MSRP.
Yeah, it used to be what's the best price off of MSRP?
And now
it was what's the least amount over MSRP I can get it for? Right?
They don't even say that. It's like MSRP has become irrelevant. It's just like how much is the watch?
Listen, people have very me and Marco covered this topic pretty extensively about the short-term memory that people have, right? We're so focused on things that just happened that we seem to forget. That's why we did the 6-year timeline of these pieces and where it's gone. So yes, from the peaks, 15400 ST blue dial was at, let's say, $80,000. So it's pretty much cut in half. I don't see too much more of a sharp decline in that piece anymore.
Well, then let's talk about another super popular model.
Love that watch.
I know, Nino, you love this. You have one of these, no?
Yeah.
So let's talk about the Vacheron Automatic, specifically rose gold blue, which I think this is the one they got up to.
We sold 2 units for 120,000 each. That was the highest we sold them for.
And the price today?
And the price today is in half. It's halved. about.
So this is the
65,000,
one that came down to MSRP level.
pretty much.
What
Yeah.
about the steel stuff?
Same thing. The steel one is still trading for a little bit over MSRP, again, because it's stainless steel, it's more, wearable
So
on the daily.
it's funny because
And
if you hold on,
And of
if you look at APs, the gold took, I guess, the bigger hit than steel.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
Where
fair to say.
with AP it was the steel stuff that took the bigger hit percentage-wise. Where here it's vice versa. Seems like.
Okay, so look, if today it's about equal. The VC blue dial, 4500V with the blue dial, the highest it got up to was around the 60,000 mark, and today it halved. They literally halved at this point.
So I guess it's only fair to bring in something special, and that's one that Nino grabbed right away when you saw it because he's never seen one, and that's the Everest craze, right? These are the ones that it just kind of went completely nuts.
Well, it's not that they went nuts because it's not really fair to say they went nuts because they just weren't available. This is a new release.
When it was announced, it was already pre-sold.
Yeah, they were pretty much
You couldn't even
pre-sold,
get
yeah.
it.
Yeah.
I couldn't get it. I tried so hard to even get to see.
So
how
Yeah.
this a year ago was what?
This a year ago, it's probably the same price it is today. It's a supply-demand formula.
So at the peak it was.
Yeah, at the peak of VC Chrono, I saw sell for 115,000, whereas today it's hovering around the $75,000 mark. So it's fair to say it definitely took a dip.
Yeah.
But again, a dip to 2.5x. I don't remember what the retail on this was, but it's
30-something thousand maybe.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's at least 2x still. So here we are a year later, and I've yet to find a watch that trades on the list. Well, I'm gonna keep looking, and let's run through some.
Let's do some RMs.
Let's run through some RMs.
Yeah.
What do
We have two here.
All right. So
Well, the most interesting one, if you want to, it doesn't matter which one you start with, but if you want to talk about the Le Mans, for example, the RM29, the green one right there.
I'm gonna put them both up. How about that? Le Mans. When
Yeah.
this thing first came out,
Yeah.
this came out literally at like the peak. Like when everything was just insane.
Yeah, this was a RM peak. RM peak was summer 2021, kind of right before, pretty much on the roller coaster ride up of Bitcoin, where Bitcoin topped off in November 2021. The RM market was the hottest summer, fall 2021.
Ask Nino what his thoughts on your analogy with crypto and Richard Mille. Tell him.
If I had to take a guess, it's pretty much that it's a proportional relationship.
Very, very much so, absolutely. Because look, I think the client for the RM is the guy that's more or less made a quick buck, wants a quick
New money,
flex,
quick money.
So look, RM29 Le Mans when it first came out, I sold them for 625,000, right? And then from there, as Bitcoin started to
MSRP was
drop,
what?
MSRP is like 150. So
625.
yeah. I mean, yeah.
Where's this thing now?
Well, right now we have it for sale for 375,000. So,
625. I'll give you a better one. The Nadal, the new Nadal pieces, the 3503s. 3503s. I did the white, the blue, and
those aren't even the worst. Those aren't even the worst hits.
Oh no. Blue and white, and was there a third color or just the two?
Blue and white 3503. Yeah.
Okay, so
Is that the one, the fabric strap, the light blue one?
No. This is so basically an 1103 case, but a Rafael Nadal,
Okay.
so an automatic.
Yeah.
TPT, white TPT, blue TPT. MSRP again around that 150, 160 price range. What do you think the blue one peaked at?
No idea.
Just throw a number at me. When they first came out, confirmed sale, white and blue. Just throw a number at me. Don't be shy.
850.
Close. Blue a million from what I know, and white around 1.3.
For a watch that retailed for 150,
10X.
60,000.
10X watches.
Where are those at right now?
White ones are around 700, 650. I think what happened was there's a lot of people out there that keep a close eye on them because when it comes to Richard Mille production, when you have 5,000 units, it's a lot easier to control distribution.
Yeah.
It's actually extremely easy.
Right. So when they see certain signs in the secondary market that prices are starting to dip a little bit, they'll hold back the supply. They're able to do that. Somebody like Rolex really can't. When you're pumping
You got a million
units
pieces a year.
it's a little bit different.
So this is. I just want you to guys. I want you guys to sink in. Retail price. Let's call it $165,000.
Yeah.
This thing peaks at $1.3 million. And then, oh my God, it crashed to 750, 5x. It's still, and that's when people come to me and say, okay, Roman, so is it an investment or is it not an investment? I mean, for somebody who bought that watch at retail, even if today, after the dip, he's able to sell the watch for 750, it's a hell of a return on your investment.
Yeah, I mean,
the biggest issue is those people are looking at that and saying, I paid $150 for this watch. It's worth $750 even after the dip. I don't need to sell it. I'm going to enjoy it.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why Richard Mille is so successful. What about this 1103 TPT?
That's an 11 TPT. So that's an ARM 11 Black Knight
Oh, I can see it.
and TPT. This is a watch that peaked at 450. Today could be had for 350. So again,
25%.
yeah.
Plus minus. I mean, again, we look at percentages, but then you get into the
The problem with Richard Mille percentages is any type of percentage dip is a
It's
big
like 100
number because everything is in the six figures, right?
And that's what I was just about to say. We're talking about this, 20, 25%. You know, when you talk about a root beer, it's one thing. When you talk about Richard Mille, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Hundreds of thousands, yeah. So when that thing moves, you feel it, you know. But
well, let's talk about big stuff from AP, right? This watch first came out, so
I think we sold these at what, 380, I believe.
no.
We had a blue
We
one.
had a white one that
a
we
red one.
sold at the highest market. The white one we sold for $4.25.
Wow.
And I know somebody that sold one of these for $4.50.
Yeah, we had a red one, we had a white one.
I've sold one for $4.50 if I'm not mistaken.
when they
So
first came out.
again, the biggest issue with the concept always was is its size, its wearability. They do make them in very, very limited numbers. And this, I feel, a piece like this, or even a piece like this, right? The offshore tourbillon chrono, right? Let me throw
Japan
this.
edition.
Great watch.
Japan edition, right?
Great watch.
Here's where the issue comes in with these. And you would say it should stand true for Richard Mille as well. It doesn't. Richard Mille is its own economy, its own market, literally,
Correct.
especially based on the numbers that they're turning, right? But when it comes to pieces like high complications, where the value or the price or the current price of the watch is because of what it is horologically, right? Because look, this is a chronograph. No offense to Richard Mille, you know, where you also can find this chronograph? You know, come on, watch guy. Where else do you find the chronograph that's in here? A Parmigiani.
Parmesan.
Yes, that's you knew that.
Yeah.
I took the words out of your mouth. I apologize. So, but when you get into a timepiece, and this is where the difference comes in. When you get into a timepiece that horologically, it's expensive because of the horology inside. Listen, tourbillon, skeleton, automatic chronograph. It's a complicated watch. It's a very complicated watch, right? A first automatic concept, blah, 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 right? And the price that it demands is its high retail price to begin with, and the fact that horologically it's a complicated watch. When people, secondary dealers specifically, get into doing what we do on a regular basis, at any given time we have 50 plus tourbillons in stock, or close to 100 complicated pieces out there, be it tourbillon, perpetuals, minute repeaters, whatever it might be, right? The problem is some of these pieces end up in the hands of secondary dealers that are not, I don't want to say have no business holding them, but they try to get into the higher echelon of watches because the profits are bigger. Not necessarily the percentages, the dollar amounts are higher. And that's when their knees start to shake when something happens and they need the money, they go and they try to dump them off, and they try to dump them off. And who do they call? They'll call a guy like me. And when another dealer calls me and says, hey, Roman, I want to sell off this tourbillon, and I know I'm going to take advantage of that. You know, it's dog eat dog in our business. It's not, you know, got to wear bulletproof underwear, if they say. So the difference between these dipping in price versus, let's say, Richard Mille is the kind of people that hold Richard Mille's in stock are not the ones whose knees start to shake, if you will. Plus, you have the company controlling these things. But these things tend to lower in price. So at $4.25 of this, where is this watch at now?
This watch is at 285 now.
Is at $285. So, and again, it's due to the fact that even guys like us, if I'm sitting on 50 watches, average price $300,000, I also want to move that product. Except I don't tend to flip it to a dealer. I want to move it to an end consumer by lowering the price and bringing forth that deal. So these are the ones I said that you want to look out most. Where was this thing at?
This thing, okay, so this is a very interesting one, right? Because you have 20 of them on the market. So to my knowledge, the highest I've seen one sell was about $3.25, $325,000.
And this today?
Today, luxurybazaar.com, if anybody's watching, is asking $250,000 for it.
So again, decent if you ask me. Look, the point of this entire conversation, and I can quickly I can literally pick up this entire case, and I'm sure Adrian can fire off prices. Let's go, I don't know. Where do I put this so it can be seen? I guess you could say, let's just go right across the top. Starbucks, Kermit.
All right, so we're just gonna. What about the Cartier?
Cartier.
Okay, so we'll go with the Cartier. This specific one. This is a newer version, Santos with the blue. This one didn't really meet that much of any type of movement in terms of pricing because it is fairly new. But we sold that at $9,000 today. It's $8,000. So you have Starbucks, which is an interesting one. The highest we sold a Starbucks was $32,000 today in a brand new condition. Excuse me, like this, you can find it for $16,000.
Still damn near double list. Let's go to Kermit.
So Kermit in this condition, F serial complete with all the bells and whistles. At the peak, we sold for 18. Today it could be had for 16. So not really that big of a dip.
I remember selling these for 4,000.
Yeah.
Let's go. We talked about the Everest. Tiffany.
These were what I like to call stinger to the heart because when
Stinger
to the heart. So when the 5711 Tiffany came out, I decided upon myself that the rest of the Tiffany market, any Tiffany color stuff is going to go through the roof. Let's just buy up everything. And I was right for a very short amount of time. But 31 millimeters, we were selling upwards of 13.5. Today they're at the $8,000 mark.
Still over list. Still double
Still
list.
over list, yeah.
Let's talk about ladies Nautilus.
So,
I have the diamond version and a non-diamond version here.
Yep. So here we have a 7118/1200A with the gray dial, my personal favorite one. To selling today for the $65,000 mark. They were as high as $90,000 at the peak.
And the plain Jane?
And in the 7118 blue, we sold personally here at Luxury Bazaar at $70,000 without a diamond bezel. Today this can be had for $45,000 in that condition.
Let's talk about more Rolex. So some of the newer stuff.
Green Ombre, again, this is a watch that retails for $37,000. We sold them in this configuration for $50,000. Today they can be had for $40,000. This is
right around retail.
Yeah, right around retail.
Pepsi?
This is a stainless steel Pepsi 126710 BLRO on an Oyster. We sold them as high as $32,000. Today can be had for $18,000. This is a very interesting topic of conversation, actually. So when these first came out,
considering Nina was wearing one.
Right, Nina was wearing the titanium version of it. This is the stainless steel with the ceramic bezel version of it. When they came out, the jury was still out about them because nobody could really figure out how this was going to play on the market. 43, it's neither here or there. APs were always 44 millimeter, offshores, and 42, so they kind of met halfway in the 43 millimeter line. Yeah. And we didn't really know what it was going to do, but what we actually found was that it's actually the most comfortable choice. The way they re-engineered the case,
finally.
I
mean, it's versus this, right? It's versus this.
I find that more comfortable than the 42 myself. So these were over retail. So this specific one, stainless steel with the ceramic bezel, we sold as high as $50,000. Today it could be had for pretty much MSRP today.
But there's still an advantage of having these because you guys will wonder, why would you then have them? Where's your upside if they can be had at MSRP? Well, go ahead and walk into an AP boutique and get one. You still can't buy.
They'll interview you for a code, time only. So.
Exactly, and then it's a vigorous interview process from what I understand. So, guys. I got to talk about a couple of the hot Pateks. Let's talk about 5980 stainless steel.
5980 stainless steel. Here we have the black dial. Actually, my personal favorite one. I prefer it over the blue and the white in this black configuration. A 5980 black reached heights of 150,000. Today can be had for 115. Even though it's discontinued, no more production on this watch.
Great watch, by the way.
Great watch.
I'm sorry, guys. This is sealed. What about the 5980 rose?
On a strap in a condition like this, so let's just assume it's brand new. Reached heights of 170. Today could be had for 120. Then we have the 5164R with the Tiffany stamp. That's a little bit of a different ball game in itself, right? So let's just say 5164 rose gold sold as high as 180,000. Today, a brand new one could be had for around the 125 mark.
Now, one of the interesting things, because this happens to be the Tiffany dial. I don't know if you guys can see the stamp on there, right?
Subtle.
It's somewhere under here. The interesting thing is in the highest market, Tiffany used to be hot model, rule of thumb, double. So if a 5711 was $5, Tiffany would be $10. That never stood true for some of their dressy stuff, never stood true for some of the annual calendars. But with the hype of the market and all this is going crazy, Tiffany went bonkers.
Yeah, Tiffany stamp also depends on the model, right? The 5711 Tiffany's, because there's there's so much real estate on the dial, there's no complications. They brought more than 2. They were more 2.5x because you could actually see the Tiffany stamp.
But today it's no longer 2.5x even on the popular model.
Yeah, correct.
You know,
Correct.
I think I don't remember what we're selling this one for.
We're selling it for $150,000.
$150,000. So in the peak of the market, the regular one was 180.
It was over 300.
And now you have a regular one that's what, 120 right about now, brand new, and this is what, 150.
So the premium from
shrunk from 2x to maybe 20.
From a
30%.
Tiffany to its regular counterpart, big shrink.
Oddly enough, the Tiffany, you know, last auction result, $3.3 million all in.
They're out there
and it
for-
makes me wonder, is somebody protecting their investment or was that a real buy? Because you never know with auctions.
We don't.
So I guess the only thing that's worth showing is, I think we kind of went through a lot of the pieces that are on here to sort of give a good variety. But a year ago to today looks a lot different. If I had to average it out among hot models, you're looking at a 20, max 50% dip on a very few models, basically the most popular ones, and 20 to 30% average across all models.
There's still a lot of models out there that we've spoken about previously that are, you know, quote unquote, for lack of a better term, recession proof, that have kind of just been a great hedge. You know, if our customers are in the market for a new product and they just don't want to see on paper them losing any more money, the safe bet is to trade in those pieces and put it into something stable if they're still in the market for a watch. So we've been seeing a lot of that.
I see a lot of clients taking money off the table, as they like it. And the way I had a client call me, and he was specifically talking to me about his collection. His collection is millions, right? Humongous collection. And one of the things, like, well, you know, I don't want to give out the information, but company X sold me one watch for $250,000 that is now, I know, worth about $150, but they also gave me 2 other pieces that are 3x retail. You know what I mean? I know I'm going to have to take a hit on this one, so I probably want to get rid of it and keep the 2 that are 3x. I'm like, well, you're going about it wrong. And what I literally told him to do is put his watches in the spreadsheet. I repriced everything and showed, hey, this is the market value. And I gave him the price I would pay, so realistic value if you needed to liquidate, right? And I said, the only thing you need to do is reprice your watches. So set the cost on your 250 watch to 150, get rid of it at 150, and reprice the other 2 that are 3x its retail value, but you're going to be into them, let's say, at 2x, but you're still, you know, have an upside. So later, because a lot of these collectors, especially I know guys that are impulsive, that are buying, selling, trading, they're not doing it for the profit of things. Of course, in the last 2 years, every private collector that was, I don't want to say flipping watches, but trading in and out of watches, because there are collectors out there like that, and they didn't do it for the profit. That's just how they are.
It's
right?
a hobby for them.
You know, it's a hobby. They want to buy and sell all the time. And they were realizing all these gains, and now that the market dipped a little bit, like, oh my God, I'm selling all this stuff, you know, the watches that you had to buy in order to get a watch, right? And like, I'm gonna lose 30 on this and 20 on that. Like, no, you're not. Because you have all those other watches that are on paper still, some of them are 2x, some 2.5x, or some 30% over list. So repricing your collection is actually important, and keeping up with the market, and I guess that's kind of what we try to do in these videos, to give you guys that information. You don't necessarily have to write it down. You can just call any one of our guys and they'll give you that information off the top of their heads. But I want to close this off with predictions for the future, first from the consumer market and then from the buyer's market. What do you think we're going to see over the next 6 months to a year? Knowing the political landscape, the financial landscape in the world and all those things, what are you thinking?
I mean, people think, at least from my perspective, that we're going to be in a recession. I think we're already in it. And I think that the market itself, you even just go to the grocery store, things are more expensive than they were even like a year ago. Food prices are up, everything is up. So I think, at least from the watch market perspective, I feel like things feel like they're kind of stabilized somewhat. And I would say like pre-pandemic prices, and I think now's a great opportunity to get into pieces that you're really interested in, especially if you want to trade up, or if you're looking at trying to get into some pieces that you've really had your eyes on for a while. So I recommend people to buy what you like.
One more question for you. Do you think there's a need, considering where we have gone, and people calling this an index, a market, a tradable commodity, do you think, as with any markets, traditional avenues of investment, do you think there's a need to hedge a collection? Like you would hedge some stocks?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely a fair way to look at it, especially if you're looking at it from again, like when we were talking about it earlier, some people are buying for the sake of just, they really enjoy the passion of collecting or whatever. If you're looking at it as a financial investment, absolutely. You have your blue chip stocks, you have like your lower end kind of like ones that you're gonna maybe put in a little bit more on, but you're gonna take a little bit more of a risk and you're gonna take that gamble. And so you need to diversify.
So then at which point
what you want.
should it be sort of a traditional formula where, you ask any given financial advisor or broker, how to diversify your investment via traditional channels, and they'll usually give you like a percentage of, you want to have this much in cash, this much, let's say, in real estate, some in commodities, some in stock markets, some in mutual funds, 401k, blah, and so on and so forth, traditional avenues.
Yeah.
Let's say, I'll give you a mathematical example to make life easier. Let's say if your total net worth, let's say, is $1 million, right, with everything that you own, all your investments, whatever it is that you own. Do you think there should be a standard, like once your collection gets to, let's say, 5% of your entire net worth, this is when you start to worry about actually treating it as an investment, even though you're a guy that just buys what he likes? What do you think of that?
I think that's an interesting perspective that,
right.
Especially if you're looking at it from the standpoint of, hey, do I want to be able to also try to beat out inflation? If I'm also trying to look at it from the market of, hey, if I'm going to keep on continuously buying, do I need to be trading up? Do I need to be looking at pieces that I'm going to hold like long term? There's a little bit of
so I feel like, and I'm not giving an answer to this because this is an open, it's a question that I don't have an answer to, but my thought process is that if you're going to get into this and all these publications and everybody in the world is starting to claim that this is a true market, true investment engine, et cetera, you got to look at taking a traditional approach to say, look, let's say 5% of my net worth is now parked into watches, and you have to do certain things to upkeep that investment, much like a stock portfolio where you're moving in and out of stocks, where you buy certain stocks when a certain market cools off, and so on and so forth. Then it becomes dynamic. My only issue with that is that the minute you go that route, these things then become stocks.
Yeah, and I think
you're sucking the fun out of it.
You're taking the fun out of
exactly.
like the collection aspect of it, and it becomes more of something that, oh my God, the market has gone down. No, I got to get out of this piece. I can't enjoy it.
But somebody will argue that, yes, it's an investment avenue for me, but at the same time, it's fun because I get to play with all these watches, right? So there's two sides of this token, and there's really no true answer to that, and that's why the easiest thing for me always to say was, buy what you like first and foremost. Yep. It's an expensive toy, not an investment, but it's getting harder and harder to argue that. Your perspective as the buyer that's out there all day, every day, and trading hundreds of these a week, what is your outlook on this?
My outlook is, of course, I cannot predict pricing, but what I do see is I see daily trends, weekly trends, monthly trends of things starting to happen. So our market doesn't really work like the NASDAQ or Dow Jones, where one day it's up, one day it's down. There's so many different models being traded at one point. And although a Panda Daytona has come down from the heights of 55,000 to now market price around 35, it's actually very interesting because what happens is when the panic sets in, people dump. And there's no longer, at first there's a lot of watches on the market, then those watches get sucked out of the market, they're sold, and then when you need to go out and get one, you're paying higher than you did 2 weeks ago.
You can't find them.
Right? So
where are we at now in that equation? Where are we now, would you think?
It's hard to look at it as a broad, but I can point out a few models that I paid more this week than I did 2 weeks ago or even 3 weeks ago. Because everyone keeps saying the declines decline every week, every single week, but that's not really always the case. It really depends on the model. And I think the most important thing is kind of going back to what you were saying about treating watches as a part of your portfolio or as an asset class in itself. It's very, very important to identify actually where you live. And what I mean by that is in the United States,
yeah, we take the fact that we're in the United States for granted.
Right. So we're talking solely in the United States, but when you're factoring in countries that have a volatile currency, via Japan or China right now, we're seeing what's going on with their currency. So it really depends what region you are and what your ultimate goals are. In a lot of countries, holding watches and hoarding watches is a hedge against their currency. Absolutely. In the United States, it doesn't really work like that. Our currency is not that volatile. It's more or less the reserve currency of the world.
Not to mention geopolitical. You're living in a country that's of a communist regime, let's say. I know guys that are worth a lot of money. I know it's a lot easier for them to take a crystal Richard Mille be it 4 million, 5 million, or 3 million is irrelevant because that's a lot easier to walk away with than a bag of cash. It's another thing, right? People park money in these big diamonds, big pieces, right? And to the gentleman that has so much money that where he's just trying to park a little bit of that cash somewhere, literally because it takes up less space, is the price of 5 million or 4 million really that relevant? It's another way to look
$1 million.
at it.
But I'm just gonna give my final thoughts on this. One thing I can say for sure is the overall demand for the product hasn't gone anywhere. Meaning, even if we see a decline in volume or a decline in transactions or a decline in pricing, it's just people are kind of on the sidelines for now. It doesn't mean that their taste for it went away.
They still want it.
Right. Now, if you want to compare it with the likes of cryptocurrency, that's a little bit different. Right, people. There was a big pull for people to put a certain amount of their portfolio in the crypto. But what we've seen recently with the whole FTX story, and I don't really want to harp too much on that, is consumer confidence has been lost. People don't know if they'll ever get into it. Not necessarily for pricing, but because people are just not confident with with what cryptocurrency is. It's not the case for watches. Right now, if you see a slowdown, it's because people are just waiting to see what happens with the broader markets as a whole. But the demand for the product is still there.
Crypto is such a tiny, minute part of an overall economy, like to a point where it's like, I don't know what the 0.00% is of the overall market cap on everything that's been out there. That's also when Coinbase...
Rolex is not going down, Audemars is not going down, Richard Mille is not going down, Journe is not going down.
That's when Coinbase made the announcement and said, oh, by the way, if we go down, your currency goes down with us, right? And that's when Bitcoin took a shit and it was just the whole thing. But anyway, we're not here to talk about Bitcoin, we're here to talk about watches. And the bottom line is that if you take anything away from this, is to not to panic, to open your eyes and actually see the dip that took place, which personally is very similar to NASDAQ. You took all the hottest and most popular stocks that were going crazy, the tech stocks.
The earnings of those stocks were wiped out, just like a lot of earnings, let's say, of watches have been wiped out.
But yet,
if you treat them as a stock.
But yet, you have watches that have taken a dip. Some of the ones that have taken some of the biggest hits, they're still trading some at 2x, 2.5x, 1.5x. And that's where the dip has come to. And this is where we see it stabilizing for now. What's going to happen tomorrow? None of us have a glass ball. So
yeah. That's why I don't like making price assumptions. But I will say that I can make a general statement is that I don't feel that any of our more popular and more in demand watches are going to climb below retail. It's just not happening. The demand is there.
I will tell you one final thing when it comes to this stuff. The watch market is sure as hell looking better than the crypto market right now.
That's for sure.
All right, well, guys, I will tell you this. First of all, thank you all for tuning in. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Nino, thank you so much for coming on with us. I literally caught him off guard. I'm like, you're here. Let's go have a chat. And he's like, about what am I going to say? Well, you had plenty to say and a good input. Thank you for that, Adrian. Thank you. And last but not least, the only thing we can do, we may not have a glass ball, but we can certainly give you enough of these quote-unquote market updates to sort of keep you informed of where it's at on the market. And it's not like, oh, in general, well, here's a watch, here's the price, here's where it was, here's where it is. And I think that's the most clear-cut way to be able to show somebody a true market value, literally hands-on.
You know what the most important part about all this is? I will say this. Today I had one of those moments where I sold the watch to a very good client. I actually happened to be a black strand perpetual. And and what I wanted to point out is the fact that when he confirmed the purchase and I was bringing it down to Italy to ship, I felt so good about the fact that he's getting this watch. I was so happy for him, like really focusing in on the product that he's getting.
Was he inquiring about this watch when it was about 100 grand more?
Yeah. He said he's been wanting the watch for 5 years, and I just kind of this is the time.
It's funny because a lot of consumers, but we're going to cut this off, but I'll say one last thing. A lot of consumers out there wanted to buy something, it jumped in price, like, it's going to come back down. And then it kept going up and up and up and up and up, and then the watch outpriced the consumer, and now that it seems like they want to do it in reverse. Like, yeah, maybe it will dip a little more, maybe not, but I don't want to be caught again with this thing going back up and me chasing the price.
100%. I mean, at the end of the day, we're here because we're passionate about watches. We love watches. Nino, it's great having you on as a watch consumer.
Thank you, sir.
So,
likewise.
It's a pleasure.
Learned a lot.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you. Guys, we'll see you on the next one. Thanks for tuning in.